I grew up with a fascination with guns. I was an Air Force brat. And I remember asking for and getting the cadet rifle, which was a nice dummy rifle that had, I think at those times they were single shots with a, I don't know what that thing is, a bolt. And it was for training so that you could be in one of those marching parades, which I always had some dream of doing, even though there wasn't another kid in the neighborhood who had a cadet rifle. But anyway, and then I had all kinds of other plastic guns, like the machine gun. And the closest I ever got as a kid to a real gun was another BB gun. It was the Daisy air rifle. And in our parlance, because in my family, there was no chance that I was ever going to get a BB. That was after the incident with the Zorro whip when I was 5 years old. And my mother understood that, well, and the lasso, where I lassoed my brother, what can I say? So there was no way I was going to get any BBs, but the cool thing about this Daisy dirt gun was it had a recessed, the place where the holes for the BBs came out was recessed, so you could stick it in the dirt. It was called a dirt gun. You could stick it in the dirt and shoot out the plug. And so, you know, that was fun, but that was as close as I got. So I grew up and moved to New York City. And with my first partner, Monty, we moved to the East Village. And about mid-70s, New York City was a wild frontier town, let me tell you. And living in the East Village was definitely on the edge of civilization. In fact, we ended up at this point in the mid-70s, we were living on 2nd Street between 1st Avenue and Avenue A. Now, Avenue A was La Frontera. It was the border, and that was the border to Alphabet Town, which went all the way down to Avenue D, which in those days was called Hell. And from Avenue A to Avenue D, the lawlessness extended to car shells, burnt out car shells in the street. The buildings were completely torn up for their pipes to be sold. And then, of course, there were all the shooting galleries, and I'm not talking about guns. But in that area, in fact, around the street, around the corner from where we lived, were the Continental Baths, the men's baths, the gay men's baths, where at that time, Bette Midler was singing, just starting her career, singing with her pianist, Barry Manilow. But, so we would, Monty came to the relationship with a BB gun, but this was a much cooler gun. It looked like a .45, which was the sidearm for the officers in World War II. And it also shot BBs, and once again, there were no BBs. But she did have some little darts that we could put in the gun. And occasionally in our apartment, we would kind of have fun target practicing across the room in the apartment, you know, with little into pillows, you know, that was kind of fun. And throughout the time that, that we were there, I had made the acquaintance of a guy who was in his 70s, an older guy. He kind of looked at me as a granddaughter, and he had told me that he was a mafioso. Now, how much that was true, I don't know, but his name was Mario. And one time we went out to lunch, and Mario was going to sit down, and he thought it was a little hot, so he takes off his jacket. And, you know, this kind of led to a little bit of my suspicion about his veracity as a mafioso, because he ends up taking off the jacket and revealing a shoulder holster with a snub-nosed .38, which, let me tell you that in New York City, I think to this day in New York State, it is against the law to own a gun unless you have a license, which is not easy to get, and certainly a concealed weapon is by no means something that you can easily get. And the penalty for that was an automatic year in jail. So you took it pretty seriously. We did consider in our, well, so then with Mario, what I asked for, once I saw this gun, I really would like to have had some, you know, that was as close as I'd ever gotten to a real gun, so I said, could you get me one? And he said no. But he said, I'll get you a model. So he ends up giving me this really cool snub-nosed .38, just like his gun, except it was fake. It had a recessed block in the barrel, so it showed that you wouldn't know that it was actually a fake. And the cool thing was he did give me a shoulder holster, a real shoulder holster. So, you know, I could walk around, and I used it for Halloween and stuff. But what we had talked about as far as protection in the East Village was shotguns, because again, yes, it's true, you just have to point and shoot. However, we never really thought about the fact that the buckshot that a 22 would set off in an apartment could be really dangerous when it starts to ping off different corners. But, you know, we thought we'd give it a try. Well, so we were known as the East Village lesbians because we were, at that time, really one of the few couples that were willing to hold hands in the street. And believe me, that was not only a statement, it was a pretty dangerous proposition, and there were many times things got close. But one evening, we were walking home, and we had noticed a group of boys that were kind of, it looked like they were making notice of us, and therefore then starting to become predatory, let's face it. And so we see these kids, and it's pretty obvious they're in a gang. So we're getting nervous as we watch them, and we decide to walk much more quickly, and we notice that then they take up their pace, so that is really quite alarming to us. And finally, we get to the point where we get to our building, and of course this is the East Village, which means, you know, in a normal New York building you should have 2 locked doors. The door to the street is locked, you get in and that's where your mailbox is in the foyer, and then you get to the lobby, which of course didn't exist in ours. It was just a hallway where, well, because both of these doors were blatantly open, we would have a lot of, let's just say, street people using it as their bathroom. That was really fun. But anyway, so we, thank God, breezed through our doors, the bottom doors, and we're running up the stairs, and then behind us, 5 boys running behind us, bum, 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 bum. Now let me tell you that this was the days in New York City before the gun epidemic, truly. And remember, there was, and still is, a very heavy penalty for having a gun. So I think we were just really, really lucky that it was this time, because otherwise they would have had something that would have just equalized the distance, and that would have been it. But anyway, there they are. Boom, 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 boom. So we get to the door, and we rapidly slammed the door behind us, our apartment. We're on the 3rd floor, and they're about a whole flight behind us. And finally, we're just praying to God that they don't notice that the door has 2 glass panels in it. They were painted brown because the whole building was ancient. But, you know, okay, they didn't notice because once we slammed the door, I say to Monty, get the guns. And she says, which one? The 45 or the 38? And I say, the 45! So, all of a sudden, from bum, 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 we hear, and out the door, I take my 45, out the window as they're running away, and I say, the next time I see you in my neighborhood, I'm going to shoot your pricks off. And that's the story of the 2 fake guns that saved my life.